Today we're going to critique an article. So, I have chosen an article entitled Biomarkers Potential Uses and Limitations by Richard Mayox. So, the issue, or the trend discussed here is the description major of uses of biomarkers in clinical investigation, the assessment of the validity of biomarkers to be required with respect to the stage of disease, the causes of variability in the measurement of biomarkers range from the individual to the laboratory, issues that affect the analysis of biomarkers with recommendation on how to deal with bias and confounding. The antecedent biomarkers, diagnostic biomarkers, biomarkers variability, reliability, and validity were also discussed here. And the most important is the potential uses of biomarkers and its limitations. The other purpose is to determine the potential uses and limitations of the biomarker as stated in the title. The paper focuses on biomarkers as direct measure of biological media, and other papers in this issue will address brain imaging and other markers. To explain the two types of biomarkers, which the first is the biomarkers of exposure, its environmental exposure, effect modifier, or risk, their genetic susceptibility, and the intermediate biomarkers. And the second biomarkers is the biomarkers of disease and its screening, diagnostic tests, and prognosis, and biomarkers variability and the validity. And to highlight the factors, which is the practical consideration and concerns such as bias, cost, and confounding and acceptability. The approach or method used by the author is the author shows the background of biomarkers, which is the highlights of the biomarker, its capabilities, and the affecting and limiting factors of the biomarkers to support the author's claim and to show the boundary of the topic. The author uses the comparison method. The author compares the advantage and disadvantage of the biomarkers to support the article. And also, the author shows the negative and the positive factors of the biomarkers. In the hypothesis, there is no direct statement about the hypothesis of the author, but based on what I have read, the hypothesis that I come up is the biomarkers has potential use than to well-known functions which can be useful in the neuroscience, like detecting the early stage of the brain disease such as an Alzheimer. The major conclusion here is that shows that many studies using biomarkers never achieve their full potential because of the failure to adhere to the same rules that would apply for the use of variables that are not biological. The development of any biomarker should precede or go in parallel with the standard design of any epidemiological project or clinical trial. In forming the laboratory component, pilot studies must be completed to determine the accuracy, reliability, interpretability, and feasibility. The investigator must also establish normal distribution by important variables such as age and gender. The investigator will also want to establish the extent of the individual variation, tissue localization, and persistence of the biomarker. Moreover, he or she will need to determine the extent of inter-individual variation attributable to acquired or genetic susceptibility. If not, all of these issues can be resolved in pilot studies preceding the formal investigation. So, after reading the article, this is my critique about it. So the article is good because this can help to discover the potential uses of the biomarker, which can lead to a great advancement in science, especially in the field of medicine. It is good that the author shows the possible potential of the biomarkers. According to Mayox 2004, biomarkers can help to reduce the misclassification of the diseases in its exposure, identify the early stage of its natural history, and can open a window to related to pathogenesis and risk prediction. He also added that biomarkers can provide insight into disease progression, prognosis, and response to therapy. And yet, the authors also shows the possible factors that might affect the biomarker's ability and the limitations of the research. But this article just focuses only on the biomarker's potential use in neurological disease. disease like Alzheimer. They just limit only on one disease. Therefore, the possible potential of the other disease is being neglected. The good thing about it is that they just only focus on one disease, which is okay because it shows that they are more focused in their study. But it could be better if they just make at least 3 diseases or more, which is good. Because aside from neurological disease, biomarkers can also help in cancer detection. According to A.N. Bat et al. 2010, biomarkers are invaluable tools for cancer detection, diagnosis, patient prognosis, and treatment selection. According to S. Kumar et al. 2006, the application of these techniques to tumor biology has generated a lot of information, not only about the cellular processes that regulate proliferation, differentiation, and apoptosis in normal cell, and the disruption of this normal function in cancer initiation and progression, but also about the identification and discovery of potential biomarkers for cancer diagnosis and prognosis based on carefully constructed mechanism behind the tumor initiation and progression. These biomarkers have immense potential in tumor biology to understand the mechanism behind malignancy and in cancer screening, diagnosis, prognosis, and therapeutic targets. Therefore, adding disease biomarkers like cancers can make the article to be broad and more informative, because biomarkers have potential to help understand the mechanism of cancers and the other diseases. And in the practical consideration and concerns of the article, it is very good because they list the possible factors that should be considered. But they did not add the individual factors or the intra-individual factor, which is very important because every individual has different composition of genes. They have different medical history, and age could be a factor in affecting the biomarkers. According to Meigs 2004, inter-individual variability can result from the amount of exposure or from the way putative toxin is metabolized. According to A.N. Bat et al. 2010, in the clinical practices, it is likely to result in advanced knowledge leading to understanding of the disease and process that will facilitate the development of the more effective in disease-specific drug with minimal undesired systemic toxicity. And overall, the article is good. It just needs to be expanded for more information. In one of that is the factors affecting the biomarkers, which is the inter-individual variability. And that would be all. Thank you.